Hey everybody, welcome to the Coding Zoo. If this is your first time joining, my name is Shane. This is the HTML building blocks series. This is lesson number 19. In this lesson, we're going to cover what an HTML form is, how you use an HTML form, how it is actually used to send information to your server and record information from users. So pretty neat stuff. If you've never used forms before, we're going to go over what they are and how you would create one. Hope that interests you. If so, hey, stick around. We're going to jump right in. So let's talk about web pages and how you serve up your web pages. So I've got a little drawing here. So imagine, this little stick figure is you, and you are accessing a website. For example, maybe you're looking at Amazon.com, or maybe you're looking at your banking website, and you use a browser for that. So you interact with the browser on your computer or on your phone, and you call across the internet a group of servers. So when you type in www.amazon.com, or when you go to your bank, whatever the bank that might be, that address resolves to a bunch of servers out on the internet. So basically, when you make that call in your browser, you're talking to other servers across the internet, across the world. As you talk to those servers, and access the website, they send their website page down to you, back to your browser, and it displays it, and you see that web page. Now, imagine like at Amazon where you wanted to check out, or at the bank where you needed to enter in some information, right? You have to enter information like to tell where to send your order, right? You have to type that information in. Well, you do that using form elements. And you could submit those form elements using a form element. Now, there are other ways of submitting that data, and we'll get into that in later lessons. But one way to do it is with a form element. So you type in the data, and then you click the submit button, and that form element, that form, the browser submits that form, and that form element tells the browser where to send the data you input. You send that data to your server, and what does your server do with that data? Well, your server saves that data probably in some kind of data store, some kind of database. And then, because you submitted that form, you submitted to a certain page or certain piece of code. That code's going to save that data, and then it's going to send you a response, and you have like a page 2 or a response page, as you see, and that gets sent back to you, and you see it on your browser. So we're going to cover the part of building that form and submitting the form. We won't cover the server part. That's something we'll do in later lessons, but we'll show you how to create the form element and how to tell it where to post information to. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, hey, leave me a question below and I'll be sure to get back to you. So let's jump into the code. All right, so on my desktop, I have my index page, and I created a little style CSS. You'll notice I just put a little padding on the form field set, and the body. No big deal, just a little padding to give a little spacing. And I have this main.js, so I wouldn't worry about the JavaScript in this lesson. If you want to try it out, feel free to download the code or copy it from this video, and you could use the code. But the lesson is not about the JavaScript code. I'm just using that to give you an example of how you can post this information and then something else can read it. So don't worry about the JavaScript. Let's jump into the HTML. Here's my index HTML page, and I have my doc type, my HTML, my head, and my body. And you can see I'm including the JS and the CSS file, and here is my form. So let's cover this piece right here. So for an example, I put my name is, and then I put the span, and it says not available, and then I end the span. So I'm going to use this as an example to submit information from this form. We don't have a server out there, not in this lesson, but I'm going to submit the information back to the same page. So I'm going to make this form, submit the information, tell the browser to call the same page while it's passing that information. So you do that by specifying a form element. So here's your form element, FORM, and then you specify a method. Now the method for a form can be either get or post. Now think of get is, hey, I want to get some data from the server. That's called a get. I usually don't like to use get. Get is very limited. It actually puts information in your URL. You can actually see it in your URL when you use the get. It's very limited in what size you can use, how much information you can pass. It's also not quite as secure as using the other method that we're going to go over in a few minutes, which is called post. So information that's passed to your server with get, it shows up in the URL, so somebody behind you could see it. It also can be written to server logs. A lot of different server software will write that get parameters that are passed to their server logs. That's kind of a common practice. So if somebody ever hacks their servers, they can get into those logs and see your information, right? So get is something I usually try to avoid. You can use it for simple stuff, but to me personally, it doesn't make sense. I'm not necessarily trying to get something with this form. I'm trying to post something. I'm trying to send something. So that leads to the other method, that's post. So post is basically a method that's used in HTTP, and there's 4 main methods. There's more than 4, but there's 4 that are used the most, and that's put, post, get, and delete. Get is for getting data, and you should be able to run the same get over and over again and it won't change data on the server. So that's why I don't like using get, because in this case, you could be changing on the server, so it doesn't quite fit. You should, in my opinion, you shouldn't really use get. You should use post. Now, post means create. Put means to update, and delete, well, delete means to delete, right? So I think the more proper item to use here would be post. Now I'm going to use get for this example because I'm actually going to read that information from your URL, from your query parameters, just to show you how this information can be passed. So for this example, I'm going to use get, but if you're using a form, I would recommend you use post. Post also is more secure. Like I said, it won't be written into your logs, but also you can post all kinds of information. You can post binary information, like you upload a file. You can post a file and input text at the same time, all in one payload. Post is the way to go. It's a lot more flexible, a lot easier to use, and it's just all around a better process. All right, so I'm going to change this back to get for this example. Now my next attribute besides method in my form is called action. Well, action is where do I want to send this information? That could be like a server's URL. It could be a web page on your server. In this case, I'm going to send it back to myself. I'm going to send it to index.html, which is basically this page right here. I'm going to submit this form, and I'm going to send that information back to myself. So I won't go into great detail on what's inside of this form. I just want you to understand what a form is, and then in upcoming lessons we'll go over the different pieces that make up a form, the different form elements. But just real quickly, I have a field set. A field set is a way of grouping like form inputs. So if you had a form that had all kinds of information on it, and part of the information would be address information, you might have an address field set, and it would have all of the input elements for your address. So here I have a field set, and I use the element legend to name that field set. Its name is main contact, so I'm giving that field set a name. The user can see that name, and then I have a label, and that label is first name, and it's a label for my input element. Now this input element is has a type of text, and I named it person-name, and we'll go over in our next lesson how to use the input element. Now I have some JavaScript right here. Don't worry about that. Again, the lesson is not about reading this JavaScript or learning this JavaScript. The lesson is, hey, I just want you to see there's a form, and that form, the browser automatically takes care of some things for you when you submit it, and it sends it across to wherever you're telling it to send it. So this JavaScript right here, I'm going to use it to read the information that I send to myself by submitting this form. So I know it may not be too clear right now, but let me get to the browser. Let's show you that, and it'll become a little bit clearer. All right, so I'm going to go to the browser here. All right, so I have the beginning page. It says my name is not available. And here's my legend for this field set. The field set only has one field, but it could have an address, telephone number, and all that good stuff. So my field set is main contact. And here's my label, first name. Now, here's where I would type in my name. And I defined a form. It has elements and it has a submit button. So like I mentioned before, once I put in information into my form element and I click this submit, this is the submit element that was defined with the input tag. Once I click submit, the browser is going to take care of it for me, sending it where I told it to go, and I told it to send it back to myself. So I'm going to click submit. The browser is going to send it back to the same page. As this page reloads, it's going to read that information that we passed using the get. Now, the reason I use the get is because the get will put the information as a query parameter to put it in your URL, and it's easier to read. Again, I don't recommend using get most of the time. Very rarely would I use the get for posting form information. So if you look right here, this is our URL, and in a few minutes you're going to see a question mark, and you're going to see the parameter first name, and that's the information I'm passing. I'm passing my first name. And then you also should see that I read that parameter and print it out here on this line. My name is not available. That should change to my name is whatever I typed in. So let's try it out. I'm going to click submit. The browser should send the information. Submit. There it is. So it sent the information. I read the information. I printed it out there. My name is Shane Crouch. If you look up here at the browser, at the URL, you'll see it says question mark. And this is called a query parameter. Person-name equals Shane Crouch. So this is the information that the browser took out of my form and sent it to myself. Now, think about I'm talking to a server across the internet. It's your server where your web page is hosted. You're going to read that information on your server and you're going to save it somewhere so you can use it later, right? It's an input. It's a way of getting customers' data to use to give them a benefit. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, so let's look at the code one more time just to iterate. I have a form element. It has an attribute method that can be a get or a post. I recommend a post. I have an action. An action would be an address on your server or a web page on your server. And you'll eventually get into ways of collecting that data on the server. We'll cover that in future lessons. There are different ways of submitting data to a server. Using the form element is one way. You can also use field elements without the form element and use JavaScript to post the information behind the scenes. We'll get into that when we get into React. So I have this form element and it has a submit. You click to submit. The browser reads the form data and sends the data for the form, sends it all for you. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully that makes sense. I just wanted to give you an overview of what a form is. The form is one way of sending data to your server for you to collect. I just wanted to be sure to cover that before we jumped into different form elements. Now you'll find as you get into form elements and start using form elements more and more and start using JavaScript more and more, that you'll tend to get away from a form element, but most people start out by using a form element to post information until they learn those more advanced ways. Hopefully this makes sense. If not, leave me a question. Let me know how I can help you understand it. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did and you haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button below. We're going to get into different form elements, probably all of the different form elements over the next few weeks. We're going to go over them really quickly before we get into more advanced items with React, React.js, stuff like that. If you like this video, be sure to click like. If not, click dislike, leave me a comment, let me know what you didn't like and how we can improve. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope to see you next time. Have a great week.